Origins of Attuma. Attuma is a barbarian chief and citizen of Skirka. He believes he is destined to conquer Atlantis. It was during a time of war and slavery where a prophecy would tell of a warrior rise and take the kingdom of Atlantis by force, something that steered a warrior known as Rarak into ensuring that the warrior would be him. It was devotion that guided Rarak and his army to destroy several unsuspecting tribes, such as the tribe Skirka, where Attuma would see his own mother killed before him. With many killed, most women and children of Skirka were taken as slaves, as with Attuma being raised as one of the slaves who was forced working within the mines where countless others suffered greatly and eventually died off. But the mines didn't weaken Attuma, seeing how his rage and desire for revenge only made him stronger, eventually becoming strong enough to raise an army of slaves against Rarak and his army after Atlantis started to disregard the use of slavery. Even though Attuma never gained any revenge against Rarak, he found himself with a massive army after freeing and gathering other slaves with a desire to claim Rarak's goal of being the one who will overtake Atlantis. Attuma faced even a greater defeat when facing his army who looked upon him with disregard. Also, the beliefs of Attuma being the one who would one day rule Atlantis being false were starting to rise, also causing his massive army to diminish. This led Attuma into leading a way to rule the surface as a way to regain his respect from his own army and later setting his sights on ruling Atlantis once more. But Attuma was facing a setback when lacking any knowledge of the surface world or any of the human population, which led Attuma into setting up a base near the surface with the goals of capturing a human so that he and his army would study and analyze the surface world and its inhabitants. However, this attempt found itself backfiring when Attuma captured an airliner that held Janet Van Dyne, also known as the Wasp and partner of her lover Hank Pym. Selecting Janet to be the human for Attuma's studies, Attuma and his small army found themselves facing an enraged giant man who managed to rescue Janet from Attuma's clutches. With Attuma believing that all humans held the same growing abilities as with Pym and Janet, he successfully escaped both heroes to rethink his goals for ruling the surface world. Yet the fact humans are incapable of breathing water, Attuma and his small army managed to gather enough materials to design a machine that would alter the oxygen levels to where humans would be incapable of breathing and possibly giving Attuma a greater chance of ruling the surface. But an encounter with Iron Man, who was currently testing a submarine, found Attuma's plans foiled when the armored Avenger destroyed Attuma's machine. With his plans of attacking the surface world being foiled more than once, Attuma was beginning to lose the loyalty with what remained from his army. But managing to construct another machine that's designed to create tidal waves that could attack and destroy the surface world above. It would be before using this machine where Attuma noticed a swimmer near his hidden base. Believing that the swimmer was a spy, his men quickly captured the swimmer, who happened to be the Avenger known as the Wasp, who has managed to been a captive of Attuma a second time. As Attuma gloated over his goals of having the world being attacked by his tidal wave machine, he was unaware that Wasp was sending a message to the Avengers of her location and Attuma's plans. Yet even a majority of the Avengers proved to be unsuccessful against Attuma and his forces because of how he used the underwater environment as an advantage. But even his men despised Attuma's victory over the Avengers when he fought the whole team at an unfair advantage, resulting with Attuma releasing the Avengers with the members having their own respirators. Even though Attuma managed to handle his own against the Avengers and the sudden arrival of Hawkeye and Quicksilver, his plans were foiled when his tidal wave machine and a majority of his equipment was destroyed, leaving Attuma and his men fleeing from the scene to rethink their goals. Even after his foiled attempts against the surface world and its heroes, Attuma was still determined to achieve his original goal of taking over Atlantis. Managing to rebuild an army, Attuma made his attack on Atlantis once again that led itself into another fight between Namor and Attuma himself. Even an ever-dedicated Attuma still failed to overtake Atlantis nor defeat Namor, thus forcing Attuma and his defeated army being forced into retreating. But luck would strike Attuma when him and his men suddenly encountered an alien robot servant that laid dormant after accidentally being dropped from an alien spaceship. Even though Attuma at first attacked the motionless robot, he discovered that it was indestructible and that it could be functioned into following commands, something that Attuma managed to do when setting the robot onto Atlantis. Even though Attuma was successful on having the robot proving to be a threat that was too great for Namor to face, the robot's rampage found itself halted when Namor located the alien owners to help him shut off the robot. But this setback found itself changed when Attuma encountered Burra after the robotic threat, an Atlantean prince who strongly believed that he was destined to claim the Atlantean throne. Offering both Krang and Attuma their share of power within Atlantis, much like Krang, Attuma held his own secret agenda of destroying Atlantis if Burra should fail his promise. Yet Burra did manage to overtake Namor's throne after defeating him in combat and secretly using a hypnotizing machine to have the people within Atlantis under his control. With Attuma and Krang at his side, Attuma's brief share of power ended when Lady Dorma destroyed Burra's machine after discovering it. With the Atlanteans restored, Attuma set his goals on destroying Atlantis when Burra lost his power over the Atlanteans. But this only resulted in another defeat in the hands of Namor, who managed to rightfully reclaim his throne. Another failed attempt to claim Atlantis for himself because of Namor, Attuma being able to fulfill his prophecy was finding itself being nothing more than a mere misguided fable. But even a desperate Attuma still held hope of gaining the chance to strike when having scouts observe Atlantis and their ruler Namor, a chance that would finally come when Namor found himself dethroned and exiled by the very kingdom he protected. Taking the opportunity to strike against Atlantis, Attuma's leadership found itself being challenged by one of his own, Gorgol, whom Attuma quickly silenced with a single punch. After him and his army easily overtaken Atlantis, Attuma found himself facing a captured Namor. Furious because of how Namor wasn't killed on sight, Namor faked his weakness so that he would be able to challenge Attuma in a single fight, something that Attuma couldn't deny in front of his own army. Yet even Namor found the fight favoring Attuma because of his unique power armor that shocked Namor after each strike against Attuma. But Attuma found himself facing another defeat in the hands of Namor after Gorgol and Dorma found and destroyed the source of Attuma's power armor. Death by Sentry. Attuma is beheaded by the Sentry after attacking New York with his warrior hordes. He is later revived by Dr. Doom in a vow to kill Namor. Attuma has become one of the worthy and is transformed into Nurkod, breaker of oceans, after he comes into possession of one of the mystic hammers. Nurkod wreaks havoc all over the oceans and his next target is New Atlantis. Namor comes into conflict with Nurkod, but he is simply overwhelmed and forced to retreat as New Atlantis falls under the mighty blow of Nurkod's mystic hammer. Nurkod has Tiger Shark, Tyruk, and Aradna as his generals, and he has them watch the prisoners of New Atlantis and turns his attention into destroying Canada. Nurkod would terrorize Vancouver off the Pacific coast with his army and come into conflict with Alpha Flight. Nurkod begins to gain the upper hand when he sweeps most members of Alpha Flight inside a powerful whirlpool. Shaman goes into his psychopomp form and discovers that Attuma's enhanced powers and abilities were given to him by the serpent. Guardian grabs Nurkod from behind and takes him to Cape Race, Newfoundland off the Atlantic coast. Guardian overexerts himself with a powerful blasts and draws blood on Nurkod, but the payload was too much on his battlesuit and he collapses. Nurkod's forces would retreat from Vancouver when they were without their leader. Powers and abilities. Attuma possessed the physical benefits of his Atlantean nature. However, many of Attuma's natural physical Atlantean attributes are considerably much more developed than those possessed by the vast majority of his species due to Attuma being a mutant as well. Attuma is capable of breathing and surviving both on land and underwater indefinitely, whereas most Atlanteans are only able to survive out of the water for about 10 minutes without artificial aid, certain chemicals, or mechanical devices. However, Attuma, like Namor, will still need occasional physical contact with water in order to survive on land, and can lift about 60 tons as long as he's underwater or at least slightly wet on land, and his stamina is enough to stay at peak capacity for about 24 hours on end before the buildup of fatigue toxins in his bloodstream begins to impair him and affect his overall capabilities. Attuma also possesses superhuman speed, reflexes, and agility, and can swim at a speed much faster than normal Atlanteans that rivals Namor's at hundreds of miles per hour. Attuma's body is much more resistant to all forms of physical injury than that of the bodily tissues of a normal human being or even normal Atlanteans, and is tough enough to withstand high-caliber bullets, falls from a great height of over several stories, and powerful energy attacks while sustaining little to no pain or physical injury, as well as also withstanding powerful impact forces and blunt force trauma from direct physical blows from superhumans, as well as from extreme pressures and extreme temperatures, such as the extreme cold and pressure of being deep underwater, to where normal humans or even normal Atlanteans would not be capable of survival from being submerged that deep underwater. And although it's Attuma's weakness, he can also withstand extreme heat better than normal humans. Attuma also has superhumanly acute senses, where his sense of sight, hearing, and smell, like all Atlanteans, are at a level that are greater than that of what normal humans are capable, as Attuma's senses, like all Atlanteans, are specifically adapted to living in the ocean. Attuma's eyes are capable of seeing objects with much better clarity at much greater distances than that of what normal humans are capable, and are specially developed to be more sensitive to the green portion of the spectrum, enabling him to see in the murky depths of areas of near total darkness, such as being at the bottom of the ocean floor, allowing Attuma to see clearly in the murky depths of the ocean, giving him night vision. Attuma, like all Atlanteans, has a longer lifespan, where the average Atlantean lifespan being about 150 years of age. Attuma is a skilled and experienced Atlantean warrior, who was trained extensively in the use of many different forms of combat and weapon use, including swordsmanship. Attuma is also an expert hand-to-hand combatant, especially while fighting underwater, and having been fully trained, has also achieved mastery in the use of most form of the Atlantean-based weapons. Attuma is also a skilled military tactician in oceanic warfare, who wears metal body armor and a helmet, and uses a unique three-pronged, trident-shaped, iron sword that weighs about 50 pounds as his main weapon.